It's funny how the two sort of self-employed guys are getting the most out of this buffet because all my other mates have got proper jobs.
Welcome to Drum and Drummer, a podcast focused on drums, drumming and drummers. I'm George Pickering and that's Ben Winty, and we are both professional drummers in this business we call music. So stick around and join us as we pass the time whilst trying to stay in time.
Were you on the largers again?
I was on the Guinness, mate.
You were drinking Guinness, aren't you?
Yeah. Boy George. It's George, the boy.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of people from the 80s, Gary Glitter's out now, isn't he?
Out where? Prison?
Prison.
Is he?
Let's go controversial immediately with the pod. Is my new angle. Yeah, he's out.
Okay.
He is out.
Hmm.
There's no segue to another part of something else. That was just, some topical news stories.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good. Yeah. We got, this is, of course, Drum and Drummer.
Yeah.
If you're new, hello. If you're old, hello. Episode 64.
Anything to do with 64? I immediately remembered there was a childhood show called 64 Zoo Lane. That's all I've got on the number 64.
Cool.
Yep.
Beatles, when I'm 64.
Yep. That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff.
Great stuff. Well,
we got lots to...
strong start to the pod.
Start, the strongest of starts. Good. We got quite a lot to talk about. It's just me and you, George.
Actually.
Just me and you.
Yep. No guest.
Again. The guest is conversation.
The guest is all you lovely listeners.
Yeah.
Although you can't talk.
No. So you
listen.
just keep listening. Listen
Please.
to what we've got to say. If only someone would listen.
But they won't.
Do you know anyone? Do you know anyone from Parky? Yeah, I know a guy. Yeah, I think he used to do sound in the 70s.
It does help if you watch The Office before you listen to this pod. If you're a new listener.
Well, let's start with our weekend that we've just had.
Well, let's start with our night out.
Well, here we go.
Yeah. By the way, I think, we went to a gig. We saw Young Pine play. We'll get to all of that. I think it's the first time you and I have ever gone out. Just me and you. Because,
yeah,
because
could well be.
We've known each other since 2018. And, I worked at your studio for a while and we always hung out there. And it was great. And then we've done many gigs together. Me usually on bass. And it's always great, So we've spent a lot of time as mates doing, work, but we've never actually just gone out. So it was weird. It was weird in a way. It was like, and we obviously do the pod, but suddenly we were getting on a train to go to a working men's club to watch a band. It's like, fucking hell, going on a night out with Ben, which has never happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, should we explain what the gig was?
So, as we mentioned, we went to see Young Pine do their headline show at the Rifle Club.
Yep.
Down in Portsmouth. See, Liam, the drummer, was on the pod recently.
Yep.
And I've worked with them in the studio a lot. So we went to see them play live.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good, wasn't it?
It was. Do you know what? It was great because you've obviously recorded every song they've ever recorded, I think, or most of them.
I've done, they've only recorded with me, yeah.
Yeah. But, so you know the songs really well, and I know them quite well from, I am a fan of the band, and, when they used to rehearse, I'd be working a lot of the time, so I'd hear those songs relentlessly, and it was funny. We were singing along to parts of the songs.
To the hits.
Yeah. Even guitar parts. We knew them that well.
Yeah.
It's like, I love do-do-do-do-do-do, a lot of heart in the neck.
You drove down to Hilsey because of the train strikes.
Yeah.
And then we nipped on the train down to Fratton. So you was on the Coke.
I was on the
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
Sandra. He had one regular sized Coca-Cola.
Yep. Exactly. And it wasn't even very nice. It was, when it like the syrup doesn't mix well with the carbonated water, and it was basically just carbonated water. And I was like, this is a shame.
And
but
I had a few Sanny McGuellies.
You did? You had about 3 pints. I was like, he's going to get drunk, I reckon.
I think I was a little bit pissed. Just on 3 pints. That long since I've been
young
out.
pine. Yeah.
Well, we went out back
Yeah.
and saw some of the guys, and there was this old dude who just went, "Are you famous?"
Yeah. That was what he said to us.
Yeah, and we were like, "Huh?"
No, did he say, "Are you the famous guys?" Or was it just, "Are you famous?"
I think it was just,
It might have been.
"Are you famous?" And we were like, and he went, "Oh, Lauren said there was a couple of famous guys coming," and we went, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah. You immediately went, "Yeah, we are." Yeah.
Yeah, it's us. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. Well, that was our first, brush with fame, I'd say, because a few people were discussing Liam being on the pod,
Yeah.
And I did quite like it. Neither of us wore hats, so we looked like our logo. and we even wore the suits. No, we didn't wear the suits.
But that was good.
It was a good night.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, it was good fun.
And then we move on to Saturday.
Right. Well, actually, I'm going to go back in time quickly.
Oh, okay.
So I had 2 gigs in the previous week. Well,
I was gonna ignore the railway gig because when I asked you how it went, you went, "Yeah, fine."
Well,
and you went, "There's nothing to tell." So I thought, well, let's not bother talking about that on the podcast because clearly.
Yeah, but it was. But
I just chatted to Mikey. Cool, Mikey.
I did chat
for an
to
hour
Mikey, the bassist. If he's listening today.
Hello, Mikey.
Hello, because. I spent most of the time talking to him. It's like, right, we got a bit of time before we go on. And he's like, "I'm going to go for a smoke." I was like, "I'll come with." And we bonded. It was nice. No, but I will say there's a few mistakes, a few errors on this gig. And I was like, this is the first time I've ever done it wasn't even an official warm-up gig. It just happened that we were doing a gig 2 days before we did Icebreaker. But there's a few things that fucked up and went wrong. And I was like, this is perfect. Because we're getting them out of the way now before Icebreaker. So, Saturday played Icebreaker Festival in Portsmouth, Southsea. Albert Road, basically. It's all on one road. Mm-hmm. And, I played with Mackenzie first, she's a singer, and her drummer is Connor Griffiths, who's been on the pod before. And he asked if I could cover for him because it was his nan's 80th birthday party. But anyway, played that gig with her in the day. It was great at a little place called the Wine Vaults. Yep. I'll be honest, the whole day, I'll get to talking about the gig, but the whole day was a lot of walking because it's Albert Road, which for people that live in Portsmouth, you'll know it's busy, it's hard to park, but that's where everything is. So how would you describe Albert Road? It's kind of like
the high street with no chains.
Yeah.
Basically, it's quite a long road. Loads of shops, bars, restaurants, things, but none of them are chains. It's all like independent places. Yeah. So it's like the alternative sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a cool place.
There's no Primark. It's really cool. It's quite historical. Yeah. And they basically close the whole thing off, and every pub and venue. It's where the Wedgwood Rooms is. Yep. Has bands on for that sort of one day.
So, exactly. So they close it off for this festival. But the thing is, I was like, I'm not going to risk parking around there. So I parked at the Pyramids car park, which is 17-minute walk from Albert Road. So I parked up. Mum and Dad were with me, bless them, the roadies. Do you know what's funny? I'll say that quickly. I used to get embarrassed about parents being at gigs. But now I'm like, no, come along. Carry a snare if you can, please. Parked up, walked to the Mackenzie gig, played the gig, quickest sound check ever, because obviously it's like 30 minutes of band and then 30-minute changeover time, which when you got backing tracks and stuff, you're sort of like up against it. Played the gig and it was like, right, well, we got to go back to the car to drop this stuff off because I've got a few hours before I play a Rem. And then in the time, I sort of watched a few bands. It was nice. And then I had to go back to the car, get the stuff, and then we loaded in at Wedgwood Rooms. Right, so the gig was great. Gig was really fun. It was just one of those sort of perfect gigs. Like everything went well. There was a good crowd. Sound was great, which was impressive, to be honest, because we didn't have long to set up. And just the band was sort of on it. You know what I mean? There was no fuck-ups. That's why I wanted to mention the warm-up show, because it sort of got all those things out of the way. And, just a really brilliant gig. And then, packed down, watched next band, got my stuff back to the car, went home. But it was like quite a full-on day, playing with someone I'd never played with before, and then ran at Wedgwood Rooms. But it was a really, really, really lovely day.
That's
what I mean? Lovely day. Oh, right. Drumming-wise, this was the one thing I was going to talk about today. So I recently changed drum heads for my snare.
Yeah.
So I told you about this, and you were like, oh, this is a good talking point. So I used Evans on my snare.
Mm-hmm.
Which one? I can't remember what we used. Don't know what the...
I'm pretty sure you just had a G2.
Probably just a G2.
Yeah.
And I needed a new snare head for Icebreaker. And I was like, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get a Remo Ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're sort of like, in terms of Remo Ambassador, they're sort of like the main snare head, I think. And I was like, let's get one of them. Let's switch it up. But I didn't really have a chance to properly tune it because I got it and then I was trying to tune it at the house, but we've got neighbors and stuff. So I was sort of hitting it softly and I was like, I think it's okay. But then, so we did the first gig with Mackenzie and there wasn't even a sound check because obviously they've sound checked drums for the day. So it's like you set up and we didn't even run any of the song. It was just like, check the backing track worked and it was like, right.
AKA the line check.
Exactly. But there was no line check on drums, baby, because... didn't need to. So the first time I played that snare was during the gig and I started playing. I was like, oh, this sounds shit. This sounds really, sounded like, I don't know, just loose, just untuned. It was just like really horrible sound. I was like, fucking hell. So between sets, I sort of cranked it up a bit. I thought I'd tightened it enough, but my God, it was... floppy snare.
Crank that shit up.
Exactly. So if anything, the Mackenzie gig was a good chance to check the snare was working before the next gig. But but I thought I'd mention that as a snare story. But other than that, it sounded great, the Remo. It sounded more, drummers like to use certain words, and it sounded more powdery than the Evans one. That's all I'll say. It just, for whatever reason, it had more, I don't know, powder, whatever that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Beef is a word used to describe
powder. Yeah.
Powder. Yeah.
Powdery. Yeah.
Crisp.
Pillowy.
Yeah. Yeah. These are all drummer words. If you can think of any drummer
you sent that
words.
picture of the Remo skin. You're like, oh, check.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. I was like, actually, I use a Remo on my snare.
Yeah.
On my Mapex Cherry Bomb. Because when I bought it, it had a Mapex branded factory head, but it was a Remo Ambassador X, and it sounded really good. That's why I really like the snare drum.
Yeah.
And so then I've replaced it a few times and would get the Ambassador X on it. But then one time they didn't have it in stock down at Graham Russell, and so they kind of sorted me out with like the Evans equivalent.
Yeah.
And it just the snare lost something with that, and so I think then when I could switch back to the Ambassador X, and there's definitely something, it's different, but I've got a hand hammered Natal brass snare drum here at the studio, which has kindly been sort of lent to me by Jacko from Bury Tomorrow, and that's got an Evans HD dry or something on it, and that snare just sounds fucking incredible, and that's my go-to for recording now. It sounds so good, but yet the Cherry Bomb, the Evans kind of killed the sound a bit too much. And the Remo lets it breathe a bit more. But this brass snare, maybe you're getting more sizzle from the metallic shell, which enables the skin to need to be a bit duller, or can afford to be. Whereas the wood of the Cherry Bomb, the Evans skin is actually suffocating the drum a bit too much. So you're not getting enough sizzle. And actually the Remo seems to have a bit more of like an elastic kind of sound and a bit more life.
Well, I think it's the thing I've been looking for in a snare drum skin or snare drum or anything is sometimes you can, if you hit the drum hard, you can hear that it's a snare. But sometimes if you just tap it lightly, you don't really get any sort of sound out of it. And it's sort of, I always hate that feeling. And I played that Ludwig snare that Laurie was talking about the other week. Played that at him and Pat's studio, and it was like even the slightest touch, it just sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing, you know, it's sort of like...
I mean, I'd be inclined to say, and I might be wrong, but I'd be inclined to say that's a real difference between a metal snare and a wooden snare.
Probably a bit of that, yeah.
Because actually I was looking at a video came up on Instagram, and it was a guy just playing loads of different aluminium snares. There was like a DW, there was a Mapex, there was a BDC, all these different ones. And I was like, oh Christ, these sound amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, I think I'm going to have a look online and see how much some of these are. Because it was like, that's one thing I don't have actually is an aluminium snare drum. Got a few wood ones, I've got the brass hand hammered, but I was always, never, I was kind of always put off by silver snare drums.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They just looked, they didn't look very snazzy. They look quite, in a way, a bit cheap.
The metal
because
thing as well.
basic kits all seem to have these just basic steel snare drums. Obviously steel's different to aluminium, and it's like, maybe that's, especially in recording, a lot of genres, you really want that snarey sizzle and rattle.
Yeah.
And in lighter stuff. And that's why in the session I did on Saturday, it's like that brass guitar really benefited from that. And maybe it's like, actually I'd quite like to enhance my metal snare collection, and getting an aluminium one would give that real crisp precision. Yeah. That probably is what you got from that Ludwig, you know.
I think it is, and it's that feeling of even if you're tapping it on the lightest little ghost notes, it still sounds so. There's the snare. Do you know what I mean? As
like
opposed
frying
to
bacon.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to hear frying bacon.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, it's the equivalent. Yeah, it's the equivalent of putting bacon in a hot pan and not hearing it. But not hearing anything.
Yeah,
that's some snares, and you're like, where's that bacon sound? You know?
And then you realise you ain't turned the gas on.
Yeah, exactly. Fun story segue from that. I once didn't understand how a gas hob works as a young teen, let's say, maybe even a child. So Saturday mornings would be, bacon sandwiches, obviously, and Dad would usually put the bacon on, and I'd see him turn this thing on the hob, and I was like, that turns the fire on, And so one morning I was like, do you know what? I'm up. I'm going to make a start on the bacon, because I think I've got my head around how to make a bacon sandwich. Put a bit of oil in the pan, fry it. There you go. And so I turned the knob on the hob, and I was like, where's the flames? There's nothing. What the fuck's going on? Didn't press the ignition. Didn't ignite the gas. And I just left it on, and
I got very sleepy.
It must come on at some point. And then about 5 minutes later, Dad was like, Jesus, what's that smell? He comes downstairs, and I'm like, just the flames won't go on. He's like, oh my God, he's like,
don't do it now.
Do not press that button. I think that's what he said. He's like, right, let's open this door, and then just,
Some have a button, and some have you push the dial down that you turn. Mine's a...
Oh, have you got one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
if you're an old woman, you've got one of those long lighters with a little...
Yeah.
I like them. Yeah, they're cool.
Yeah.
Right, what else have we got to talk about?
Well, the day you were doing Icebreaker...
Oh, yeah.
So I was doing some session drumming for a young artist at the studio, Neil producing a couple of songs. There's two things really here. I've been using my Top Banana Drums cymbal toppers, the 3D cymbal toppers. I got you some for Christmas, or for your birthday, either one. And I got a set for myself, and I've been using them, and I really like them.
Nice.
So they're just... So I took the metal bolt, I don't know, what do you call the top bit that you unscrew? The bit you unscrew. Yeah. Take that off, and these replace them and act as a sort of felt as well. I found actually I'm going felt, cymbal, felt, topper, working my way up.
Cymbal, felt, topper. Yeah, that makes sense.
Felt, cymbal, felt, topper. But they just feel, because they're kind of got a textured edge, they're really easy to screw on and unscrew.
Nice.
And yeah, it's quite cool having they're pink.
Yeah.
Just sit on top of your cymbals. Anyway, but so yeah, I did 2 songs. One was quite sort of standard kind of, I don't know, say rock, but very much sounded like Love Story by Taylor Swift.
Right.
So it's quite like, verses, hi-hat and kick, and then standard sort of backbeat throughout. And then the second track was actually was interesting. It was a bit trickier, and it was one of them ones where it's like, I really don't know what to do here. Because there was no real beat. Right. It was more like, we're chatting to Neil, and it's like, this is more like percussion. So it's kind of a beat, but like a lot of toms, and there's an accent. And then like the snare's only on beat 4 of every other bar.
Yeah.
And like it's working out what those accents are, and then what you're doing in the middle of those accents. And yeah, where do you hit the snare? Where don't you hit the snare? When are you hitting the crash? You got to do floor tom in the verses with kick. You got to just keep the kick going all the way through. And a lot of that is like, especially when I'd never heard the song before, you kind of got to very quickly, there's no muscle memory to rely on what you're doing. So it's like, I know what these accents are, so I've got to very quickly work out like what's going on in between these accents. How am I doing quavers or semi-quavers or just crotchets and stuff. So it's a bit of one of them ones where it's like, we got it down, and what we had sounded, it was really good, and Neil helped massively in terms of like what producing the song, where's it going to build up, where's it going to drop down. But personally, it was one of them ones where it's like, I felt quite unsatisfied by what I did. Right. Whereas the first track's like, yeah, I know what this should do. Yeah. Bosh. Oh, that sounds great. Let's get a few more takes. Iron out a few. Look, this was like, this is really one of those ones where it's like, you could do so many different things. Yeah. And I don't, off the top of my head, know what to do. But on the flip side, when Neil's producing, so it's what him and the client want, and I've just got to be a servant to that thing. And then because it's kind of wasn't simple, it just took a bit longer to get it worked out, and going, well, let's try this, and then listening back and going, okay, well, this needs to change. And so you finish, and it's like, well, I don't feel like I didn't just come in and just be like, bang, nail it. You're building up in a very different way. But what
is it because almost it's so open that it's like,
yeah, it's just literally like you could do anything.
Yeah, because I've had things like, say if you have an assignment at uni or whatever, and it's so vague that you're like, well, I don't know, that's just a word, or that's, I would say at BIM we had to do a 20-minute drum solo, and we were like, yeah, but what's the theme? And they're like, no, just do what you want. You have 20 minutes. Yeah. Go crazy. You're like, well, I don't know what to.
And I think it's the difference being is like, for me as a session drummer playing in the studio, it's some of it's going to be, well, as the drummer, this is what I'd do. Yeah. My experience and going like, this is what the drums should do, and this will sound good. And then do people like that? Yeah. Whereas this is the other way round, where I'm a session drummer, and this is purely, you tell me what to do, and I'll play it. What do you want? My opinion on what this should have is irrelevant. Yeah. What do you want this song to do? And then my skill as the session drummer is being able to then do that well and quickly. So it was 2 very different sides to like that of being the session drummer. Yeah. But it was good, they were very happy. Yeah. And then I went to a 40th birthday party. Oh. I was out 2 nights in a row, mate.
That's mental.
It's insane. It was
a surprise. Were you on the largers again?
I was on the Guinness, mate. The Guinness.
You were drinking Guinness, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, me and Emmett like to get on the old Guinness when we're out and about. Nice. Yeah, it was down at Cam's Mill in Fareham. Yeah, it was a surprise for a good friend of mine, Dave Corderi. Nice. But it was weird. Just like, oh, this is a 40th. Yeah. It was like the first one. Yeah. And it's like,
it'll be you soon. It's coming.
Yeah, well, not that soon. But like quite a lot of my friends who are from my first band, 3 Day Bender, were all a couple of years above me. So I'm turning 38 this year. They're all there's a lot of 40th birthdays this year. And it was like, I remember going to 18th parties. Yep. And it's like, now it's 40. And everyone's really well dressed. and it's very civil.
Yep.
I think there was a round of tequila shots that went round.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, and then
But that almost like, oh, do you remember when we used to do these?
Well, it was just very weird. But then Big Will, his dad gave us a lift there and back. And Will said to his dad, like, did you ever think you'd be still giving us lifts to go out drinking at this age? But it was a very nice time. And,
lovely.
There was a lovely pizza buffet.
Oh, yeah.
The pizza was really good. So
when you say pizza buffet, was it like a van? Like you get like a
I think it was like
van?
No, I think it was done in-house, but they were properly made pizza oven style.
Oh, I love that.
And my friend Dan, who's also like a freelance graphic designer and photographer, I think we ate a lot of pizza. And I said to him, like, it's funny how the two sort of self-employed guys are getting the most out of this buffet, because all my other mates have got proper jobs. Yeah,
you joke, but that's good. When I was at the 505's gig the other night, one of them got a Mackey's and had too much sauce left over, too many ketchup. And I was like, I'll have them. I'll take them home. Just the next week in my fridge. Oh, we got some. I wasn't just eating ketchup packets willy nilly. It was with something. But you can spot the self-employed ones a mile off.
One thing I did notice drumming on Saturday, one of my A custom crash that sits on my left, starting to get some cracks around the rim.
That is a shame. How deep are these cracks?
The deepest is probably only 1 centimetre.
Yeah,
but there's quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
2 or 3 mil just dotted around the edge. It's like, I don't know what. Like, obviously, I've had that cymbal must be about 8 years now, and obviously it gets hit a lot. And it gets used a lot in studio sessions with other bands if their cymbals are shit.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to mix these. You could just use mine. But I do wonder, like, is there an element of it's just been sat in the studio, like in the warehouse bit upstairs, like in the cold?
Yeah.
Has that done something maybe?
Probably.
Which made it a bit more brittle? Or is it just natural wear and tear from twanging it for 8 years? But, I guess at some point I'll have to look at getting a new one.
Well, we've done well in talking about drums this week, because we sometimes don't at all. But let's talk cymbals.
And they're the best episodes.
Yeah. When we talk about snares, I was like, people are going to switch off and go, oh God, why is the drum podcast talking about drums?
Talk about nearly burning the house down, cooking bacon.
Add a story about, gas. What cymbals are you looking at?
Well, now I can't rule out a trip to Sabian Town.
Yeah.
Can't rule it out. What would be interesting to see is like, well, that HHX Evolution I've got is so good, but obviously you want to have slightly different. So it's like, well, would it go down that same route of have the same cymbal but a different size, like a 19-inch?
Yeah.
Or I think again it'd just be when I've got the money, because I ain't got the money at the moment, of just going and doing a pure shootout, taking my cymbals down to Graham Russell and going, what you got?
Yep.
And listening and going and just purely basing it on ears. That's the way to do it. But I still want a new ride, So I want something a bit more washy. I want an aluminium snare.
Yeah.
I want to reskin my kit. Actually, I want to, because I was sorting out Young Pines kit.
Yep.
And,
mention that.
I actually did, because we've both done the trick where you put like G2s on the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't remember if it was the kit Liam used at the gig or the other half I've got here, which I've started looking at. But I actually had G1s on the bottom. And it felt like that was like a good middle ground between a really thin reso head and a thicker G2. It just maybe gave the tom a little bit more zing.
Isn't that the way it's meant to be though? G2's on the top and then G1's on the bottom.
Well, G1s are a batter head.
Are they?
Yeah.
I thought that was the reso name.
No, I think G1s are a 1-ply, G2s are a 2-ply, but they're still batters.
Oh, okay.
And the reso heads are even thinner,
Oh, okay.
But this is like just a 1-ply batter head on the bottom.
Yeah.
So you're still getting some of that control.
Yeah.
You get, but something I look at, but drums are just fucking money pits.
It's just money in it. Even the other day, because I bought a new snare head and sticks, and I bought a pack of guitar strings. That's unrelated, but it was about, I think, 40 quid for the head and sticks, because the sticks were like 12, 13 quid now, and the head was 27.
I remember I used to get Zildjian 7As when I was a kid for like $6.95.
Yeah. It's mental.
Doubled.
Well, I feel like a tenner is like, okay, a tenner's fair enough, but when they're 12 or 13, I'm like, fuck it, that's too much. But I need to get some new cymbals, because my same cymbal, actually, the one on my left, is cracked beyond belief. I tried it on a gig the other night and I was like, no, this doesn't sound good anymore. It's got cracks and it sounds bad. It sounds like it's got cracks in it. Yeah. But I am thinking of, getting a whole new set when I get this new job and the old salary comes in. I do want to get some Zildjian Ks for the first time ever, because they've always been the ones that I've sort of, all my favorite drummers use them, and I think I will base it just on that. That's kind of why I got a Remo head, because I was like, well, I've heard drummers talk about that recently, so it's like I'll go with that. And
you just got to go and try. You got to go in, especially with cymbals now. You got to go and try them and not think about what brand or what label they are.
It's tricky though when you
can have an idea of going like, in terms of like, I like the sound of what Zs do or Ks. Ks like a darker kind of not washier, but like a more sultry kind of sound. Because I had a K crash. So you kind of can know what you're after, but you who knows? You could be looking at an Istanbul, you could be looking at a Minor,
This is true, yeah.
You got to go, what sounds the best, what feels good to play, and what fits in context with my other cymbals. I think that's just really important. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
Little bit of correspondence to finish the episode.
Let's talk about the correspondence.
So the other week I mentioned a little bit about sort of gig anxiety. And friend of the show, Ryan, has been in touch, and he said, hey bud, listen to the most recent pod. I was listening to the bit about anxiety for gigs. I've been using the Medito app on my phone to meditate every day, and they cover exactly what you were talking about. I've been doing it to help with general anxiety, and it's helped a lot. Hope all else is good. Always happy to hear the studio is busy. So that's interesting.
Get that in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Any praise I can, I'll just eke out. Yeah. I guess that's something I've never really thought about.
Yeah.
But, I know gig anxiety, but this is the thing, I don't get anxious about the playing. It's just the anxious, more of like the logistics and just getting there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not saying this wouldn't help that as well. I'm not saying it's one for one specific or other, but I think I might check it out.
Yeah. What?
Because
meditating?
I
used to do it.
I'm definitely, I'd say I land more on the skeptical side of life. You go, that won't work. Well, no, that wouldn't work. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Anyone else out there? Is this something? Are there other drummers or musicians who suffer from anxiety, and have they used anything like this to help? And what their experience has been? Get in touch.
Meditating is a good one, because I used to do it every day, and it's weird how it works, because you do it for 10 minutes in the morning. You go, I don't think this is helping, but then it slowly sort of works its way into your life. But the thing I do now for anxiety on gigs is I go for a run. So I never used to exercise on the day of gigs, because I used to be like, well, I'll be worn out. But I remember I did a gig in Brighton, a pub, and I just felt really sort of, I don't know, like almost trapped. Like, if I wanted to leave this stage now, I couldn't. And I sort of, for whatever reason, I hated the feeling. And sometimes I'll get like that. Say, the worst I had it once was when I was playing for someone in London, and it was this tiny room, and there was like 10 people in the audience, and they're all sort of staring at you. And it was with an artist who, would talk a lot between songs, and so I was just felt very exposed, and I was like, I hate this. And so I had an identical gig a few weeks later with the same band at the same pub, and I went for a run that day, and I felt fine. I just felt free and easy, just kind of like, oh, this is great. And after that, I just sort of did it. I'd now do it every gig. Every time I have a gig, I'll make sure to do at least a 5K in the day. And I think it's another thing of, it's like my thing, I don't know if it's anxiety or what, but sometimes when you're literally the first time you're doing anything physical in the day is the gig, that can almost be a shock to the body as well. I don't know if this is an anxiety thing, but it's like, oh my God, whoa. As opposed, but if you go for a run, because I think more and more, I won't go into it too much, but you know, exercise always used to be a thing about like, well, that's how you stay healthy in terms of your body and physically. But more and more in recent years, it's like exercise is a thing for your mental health, you know, and anxiety. And it's so common now that that's what it is, you know, it's like a walk can help or whatever, but it wasn't always the case. But I think it's like, just a run for me. Half hour.
Well, I definitely think like, I walk to work when I can. Yeah. And it's a 20-minute walk, and I definitely feel better about the day ahead knowing I'm walking in.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't have to get in a car and worry about traffic or like the walk is always the same every day. Yeah. And I can listen to a podcast or listen to music, and it is a time where, yes, I'm getting some health benefits from it, but it is a time where it just feel, I don't know, like it just gives me a moment. Yeah. Before I start my day. Yeah. Of a chance for just things to engage mentally and just feel kind of feels like going from home to then just a 5-minute drive to work and then straight into work is like, it's too much. Yeah. The walk just gives me a pace, like a nice break, a breather. Plus I get some physical, and maybe just the body moving, fresh air. Yeah. And then I feel a lot better starting the working day.
And also, it's another thing is it gives you confidence. If you do like a workout or a, you know, not to make this a gym podcast all of a sudden, but if you go for a long run and then start your day, there is that sort of mental thing of like, well, I've done this run, not even in a cocky way, but I've done this run, and I don't think anyone else here has gone for a run this morning. You know, I remember I had this chef job last year where I'd have a 2-hour break on a Friday in the middle of the day. I'd do like 10 till 3 and then 5 till close, and I'd go to the gym in between, and that would sort of perk me up, but it also felt like, oh fucking hell, I've done this, no one else went to the gym. I remember, and it sort of gives you that confidence. So it's like when I come to a gig, I'm like, do you know what, I'm not as worried about this gig anymore. Like I ran 5 kilometers today, do you know what I mean? It's like what's a gig, you know? I think, exercise and meditation. I mean, that's becoming more a thing in people's lives anyway. But I think it's becoming more and more a mental health thing to help out, basically. But yeah.
Well, to finish off, Georgie, we're going to combine some correspondence with the drum dumpster.
What the hell is that? You got tossed into the right dumpster.
Here we go. What we got?
What have we got? So we've had a message from, should we say, friend of the show?
Sure, yeah. Long-time listener.
Jack a Moose.
Jack a Mouse, I think is how his handle reads. But his name's Jack, yeah.
Well,
as we mentioned the other week, who messaged because he started learning drums because of the pod, you know?
Yeah.
Which down to us. We're creating drummers, out of thin air. Yeah.
Exactly. But he does send us things. He also sent, I'm just reading through the messages now, he also sent...
All right, Jack, chill out, mate.
a book called 4 on the Floor, Fundamentals of House and Techno Drumming. But recently, I think because we mentioned in the podcast that we'd run out of things to talk about, he very kindly was like, what about these? And it's the low volume cymbals made by Zildjian. Now, what are these, you may ask?
So, I'm gonna blow your minds here. I'm gonna blow everyone's minds. Drums are loud. Okay.
Yeah. Wow, mental. By the way, thanks, Jack, for that.
Thank you, Jack. I think maybe this ties into, because recently we had in the drum dumpster, we had the quiet drumsticks.
Yes.
So what is very common is people are trying to practice or learn drums.
Did you say practice?
Yep.
Yep.
It's like practice, but you're sort of playing at the same time. Practice.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got yourself out of that hole instantly.
Oh, always got a shovel on hand. And we mentioned, there's these drumsticks that have been designed that are meant to be able to play a real drum kit.
Yep.
And they reduce the volume by this way they're made. There's also things like, obviously, electric kits, that you can then practice at home and things like that. There's also things like different types of skins you can put. You can put practice skins on a real drum kit that just really deaden the sound and give low volume. Well, our friends at Zildjian, come on in, Zildjian, we'll have a chat. Yeah?
Yeah.
Come and be friends. Come and be our pals.
Yeah.
I've seen these before, and obviously I'm assuming Jack's been looking at them because now learning drums, he wants to be able to play at home.
Yep.
And they've made these, low volume cymbals, the L80, and they basically look like cymbals, but they've just got so many loads, fucking thousands of tiny little holes through them, and they are. Here we go, let's read it. The L80 low volume cymbal is up to 80% quieter than a traditional cymbal and is the perfect solution for practice spaces, small drum lessons, low volume gigs, or anywhere you want to play and not be loud. So this is quite interesting because we've talked quite often about sound emitters at weddings, and sometimes it's like you just got to use an electric kit.
Yep.
Or you can use hot rods, but that just sounds shit.
Yep.
So I think it's for us is I'd love to find a way where I can play my drum kit. I can physically hit it as hard as I normally do. Yeah. But the volume be quieter. Yeah. But then the slight concern is whether it's these sticks or, practice skins or these low cymbals will it be too quiet? Yeah. Like, how would these sound?
Mic up everything.
Yeah, do these sound good in an actual live gigging environment? E.g., could I take my full drum kit and use these cymbals and the volume never now be an issue? Yeah, because I got these cymbals. But yeah, it's quite. I guess
what you almost need in terms of quietness is a way to have a drum kit that is like your drum kit. So you see electric kits that are amazing because they look like real kits and they sort of have heads that feel like real heads, and then you have these cymbals that feel like real cymbals, but a way to maybe plug it in so it's like an electric kit in that you can plug it in, but it feels like an acoustic kit, because that it does feel like it's one or the other. It's like acoustic kit and it's loud, or electric kit and it's fine because you can turn it up and down, but it feels different. But if there was a way that they made an electric kit, but it felt in every way like an acoustic kit. I don't know.
I wonder whether I think the ultimate thing would potentially be is, I'll just quickly run through this. A fucking band have arrived. Right. Is you can get like a Roland skin that fits on an acoustic kit. And then you hit that and that's got the trigger pad in. And then you have your acoustic drums, but they've got silent skins on with triggers that run into a drum brain. And then you've got these quiet cymbals. And that feels like it could be the ultimate hybrid between acoustic and electric kit. But it's, I'm just looking on the Zildjian website now at these low volume cymbals, all out of stock. So it's that thing. Have they hit on the solution? Yeah. To feel like you're playing a real cymbal. You can hit it hard. You just don't. They're just not fucking loud like normal cymbals. We'll see. Prove us wrong, Zildjian.
I'd
love to be proved wrong. Send us over a set, sure.
Yeah.
And we'll try them out. But you also don't want to take them to a gig and be like, I can't hear the cymbals at all. It's rubbish.
No, exactly.
But anyway, I literally have to go now.
I know. I was going to say.
I'll start my shift at work. Whee. Right. Thanks for listening. Instagram, Twitter, email, get in touch. This has been Drum and Drummer. I've been George Pickering. He's been. I got it the wrong way round. Of course, I did on purpose.
It's good banter. Good banter. Send us in your drum words. We've had beef, crisp, and powdery.
I like pillowy, like a pillow, like hitting a pillow.
Yep.
Yeah. Just have a good week, and we'll be back next week. with a lovely guest in tow.
See
you then. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Drum and Drummer. You can find us on Instagram at Drum and Drummer Podcast. And you can send us an email to drumanddrummerpod@gmail.com. Remember, just pick up the sticks and twat it.